famous shootout on the square with Wild Bill Hickok and Davis Tutt happened on the Springfield, Missouri Square in 1865. In the Civil War, Bill Hickok was a scout for the Union Army.
He had become used to a pretty rough lifestyle because the war in this area, because it was so far removed from all of the action back east, it was not as nice.
Davis Tutt was for the Confederate Army.
One of the things that was particular about Springfield from the 1840s up until the time of the Civil War was that it was pretty pro-South. A lot of Confederate sympathies were here. Hickok finally got to where he would no longer play cards or gamble with Davis Tutt. However, Tutt seemed to be egging Hickok on. Some other people who say that two different things, that there were women involved. One of them was that Hickok was involved with Davis Tutt's sister, and he didn't like that. Some other sources say that Tutt was involved with Hickok's girlfriend. So whether either or both of those is true to any degree is hard to say. But you know, so you had the Union Confederate thing, which probably was behind the gambling troubles that they had, and the possibility of either Hickok's girlfriend being mixed up in it or Tutt's sister complicated things. So the question becomes, how did Davis Tutt end up with Bill Hickok's watch if Hickok refused to play cards with Tutt? And what most people agree happened was that Tutt became angry and agitated following one of these times when he was standing behind one of his friends, and Hickok took an awful lot of money, I think, from Tutt's friends during that game. And he happened to have his watch on the table. And Tutt, I think, provoked Bill Hickok. He said, well, you've won all this money, but what about this $35 you owe me from the last time we played cards? And what Hickok did was to respond and say, well, I have a memorandum in my pocket that says it was only $25, and I'll pay you that, but no more. Well, in the course of the argument that followed, Tutt not only didn't back down from the $35, he managed to increase it to $45. And so they had this argument standoff. So Davis Tutt picked up the pocket watch off the table and said, well, I'll just keep this for security until you pay up. And so that's how he got the watch. And what happened after that isn't exactly certain, except that Wild Bill Hickok warned Davis Tutt not to wear that watch in public until they had it resolved, because it was kind of a humiliating thing for him. But he couldn't just take the watch back because there were lots of Tutt's Confederate friends there. And Springfield was still a pretty scary place that time. It was not a place of law and order. And so in the next day or two following that event, Bill Hickok was here on one side of the square, just over here behind us a little bit, and Dave Tutt was back over here where the Hearst building is now, was the U.S. courthouse. And somehow word got to Bill Hickok that Tutt was going to come out after him. And so the two started off across each other, towards each other, from either side of the square. And there are actually markers in the street that we can look at that mark where each person was standing. And most stories seem to say that they both drew at the same time and fired at each other at the same time. And Hickok had either the lucky shot or the skillful shot, because he shot Davis Tutt through the heart and killed him dead in the street. By that time, in 1865, Wild Bill Hickok had already gained some notoriety, and had perhaps even have a duel between two men was really kind of an old-fashioned thing by that time. that, coupled with his notoriety, really brought that event out into the public eye. As soon as Wild Bill Hickok had shot Davis Tutt, he turned right around and turned his gun on a bunch of Tutt's compadres who were standing behind him, who had probably egged the whole thing on. I mean, they were probably the ones that came and spread the news that Tutt was coming after him. And he threatened them because he was afraid they would then turn on him. But not only did he do that, he then turned himself in to the sheriff and actually made his case as one of self-defense. And they had a trial just a day or two afterwards where they exonerated him. They agreed it was self-defense. And so legally he was okay, but there was still a lot of division here locally. And so there were many sides to what had really actually happened and who was right and who was wrong and whether he should have gotten off or whether he should not have. And so there was really a lot of division here locally about that. Later on, 2 years later, when a journalist from Harper's Magazine came and interviewed Wild Bill Hickok, who was still living here in Springfield, he published an account of the whole story reportedly from Wild Bill Hickok's lips. And a lot of the people around here thought that that was just a big story, you know, it was just his side of it. So I'm not sure that there was, even though they set him free, there was a lot of respect for what he had done here. Dangerous it was for any people who were brave enough to admit they were Union sympathizers before or during the first part of the war. I mean, some of them were murdered because of that, and that's why others left. The time following was unfortunately a period of retaliation where it was equally dangerous for those who would admit that they were Confederate sympathizers to be in this area. And so in some ways, I think you can see this event as bigger than just over some kind of a disagreement over a woman or a gambling debt or a watch, but it was this division which still remained from the wartime.
Here, Dave Tutt fell after being shot by James Butler Wild Bill Hickok, July 21st, 1865, over a gambling debt. Hickok stood 75 yards to the southeast.
Here, James Butler Wild Bill Hickok stood when he shot Dave Tutt, July 21st, 1865. Over a gambling debt, Tutt fell 75 yards to the northwest.